Mic is on. I want to call the Griffin-Spalding County School System Board of Education meeting to order. We ask that everyone place your electronic devices on silent or either vibrate as to not disturb the meeting. And at this time, we're going to ask that everyone please stand for a word of prayer and our pledge of allegiance. Let us pray. Father God in heaven, we come before you as your children, seeking guidance in all that we do. Father God, we ask right now that your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Lord God, we ask that you continue to help us as leaders in this community to make decisions that will be best for all concerned. Father God, we ask for your grace and your mercy where we may have fallen short. And Father God, we just ask right now that you just guide this meeting in a way that you will have it to go. And Father God, we just thank you. Thank you as we prepare to begin a new school year. We thank you for the safety that you provided during the summer. And thank you for the rest that our staff and our students have been able to get from the ordeal of the pandemic. But Father God, right now we just need you to be with us as we bring our kids back into each various school. We ask these things knowing that you can and you will. And it's in Jesus' name that we do pray. Let every heart say amen. Let us pray it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Thank you. First up, we need a motion to adopt the agenda, but first I would like to add under action item the SRO contract amendment, and Mr. Shepherd will advise us on what would take place, what changes is on that contract, and I think each and every one of you have a copy at your respective places. With that being said, I'd like to get a motion to adopt the agenda with the changes that I just mentioned.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and we got a second. All in favor, raise your right hand. 5-0. Thank you. Next, we have public comment. And before we begin, I think if Mr. Lunny could accommodate us, I'm going to read to you the board policy. Any individual desiring to speak is requested to give his or her name, address, and the group, if any, that he or she is representing. The speaker should speak to the board, not to the audience. The presentation should be brief as possible, yet should include all information considered important by the speaker. Unless an extension of time is granted, each speaker shall not exceed 5 minutes. If one person has presented a matter, it is not necessary for others to repeat the same ideas. Others speaking on the same subject shall usually be limited to 1 minute each. Questions, suggestions, proposals, or criticism which have been presented verbally should also be submitted when practical in writing and should be signed by the individual for the spokesperson of the group appearing before the board. Lastly, persons appearing before the board are reminded as a point of information that members of the board are without authority to act independently as individuals in official matters. With that being said, I'll call each individual person up as they have signed up. And excuse me, please, ma'am, and please, sir, if I butcher someone's name, but I try my best to get as close as possible. The first one, the first name is Christine, and I'm looking at Tom's, okay. Hey, I was in training to be a doctor too, so my writing is just as bad.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Christine Thomas. I live at 400 North Rover Road, and I am the founder of the Stop CRT Foundations in Equity in Griffin. I really wasn't sure about what I was going to say today because I am a taxpayer or stakeholder, but I do not have children in the system here. I was at odds to speak about the racial division brought on by the current equity program adopted by the board, or the teaching of our students based not on meritocracy or standardized testing, but on student self-assessments according to culture, where the teachers maintain a supportive role instead of foundational one. Our math is based in, or how math is based in inequity rather than a universal language of certainty, or how school discipline will no longer be based on cause and effect, but on restorative approaches. Take into account the act by, not the act by the student, but the cultural representation of the act and how it affects the student. Or how librarians curate school books based in social justice and the belief students must learn to be activists instead of learning arithmetic, English, social studies, and science. Or the complete overhaul and reimagining of our educational system based in cultural sustaining programs and instruction. Or how being an anti-racist educator is necessary to teach our children how to add, spell, think critically, learn history, or dissect science. Or how the purposeful reallocation of funding would take from those deemed more privileged by the color of their skin and given to those deemed less privileged by the color of their skin. Or how black students are the majority of 48% in GSCS, and how would reallocation of that funding based in privileged work. Most of all, I was going to speak about the toxic ideology of racial division and the plan of Marxists and neo-Marxists have to create a death fracture in America and her systems, and most importantly, a death fracture in her people. A death fracture to the unity and the individualism which makes America a beacon on the hill. A death fracture to the melting pot of we are Americans first and culture is just an added spice. A death fracture to a capitalist system which has afforded so many upward mobility despite their birth class. A death fracture to individual liberty, the foundational promise where everyone has a voice regardless of their race, creed, culture, or economic status. Where hate speech, no matter how ugly, is free speech. Where all individuals have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And where we all are judged on the content of our character and not the color of our skin. We are at a crossroads in America. We have a small chance to stop what is happening with the divide and conquer methodologies and dogma of Marxism. Many people don't see it and they think this is a racial issue. This is not a racial issue. I implore you to look beyond the racial issue and the racial emotions, and look beyond what is happening. What is happening is they want to destroy, dismantle, and overhaul our systems that they say are based in white supremacy. America is a wonderful, wonderful place to be. Millions of people die to come here. Millions of people pay to come here. Look at what is happening in Cuba. Cuba, they are fighting right now because their fervency for freedom has outweighed their fear of a totalitarian government. And I don't want our America to be this way. There is room for need-based education, but when it's dealt with an equity, diversity, inclusion, foundations in equity, it only is going to hurt our children in the long run. So I thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'll be here to answer after everything's done. Thank you.
The next person is Shannon Martin. Did I get that right? Shannon? Okay. How you doing? Doing great.
Okay, let me get my notes. I'm Shannon Martin, 51 Caldwell Road in Griffin. What else did y'all need? Just that?
Pardon me?
Just that, my name and address?
Yes, ma'am. Just
Okay.
your name and address.
Okay. Now I'm just gonna try to point out some points. It's not gonna be professional like that, but we seem to base everything on race, and the critical race, or the thinking, and with the foundations in equity, it's the same thing, just a different name. It's the same beliefs that they do. Our kids need a good education. We're like low on the totem pole, which includes history, which has always been taught, including slavery. But we also need to focus on all the subjects: math, science, English. We can't keep focusing on the past. Yes, slavery was horrible. I teach my kids. We teach it in school in the history. But we've got to move on and not keep following in the same footsteps, or we're not going to get anywhere. This might supposed to be bringing more equal, but it's not. It's just causing division. School hasn't started, and it's already caused division. And they say hate is caused from the home. Well, like I said, school hasn't even started, and it's already there. All children should have the same opportunities. They should be given the same opportunity, resources, and opportunities, and not based on the race. So I'm hoping that y'all will take in consideration and look at what all of it means and hear what, all of us bring to you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Stanley Atkins II.
Good evening, board members, everyone in attendance. My name is Stanley Atkins II, 200 Pepper Tree, Griffin, Georgia. Implicit bias. Implicit bias is defined by Merriam-Webster's dictionary as a prejudice that is present but unconsciously held and recognized. It is the consciously recognized for me. Just because someone refuses to recognize a problem does not mean that a problem does not exist. It appears that the chains holding the minds of yesterday captive continue to be locked tightly shut. These locks and chains are on the minds of some of those who may even be in this room, those who choose to implement implicit bias in their actions, their beliefs, and their egregious rhetoric that they share publicly. In an area that proclaims great and growing, this context of this dialogue is overtly stagnant and non-evolving, thus showing that we are not growing. One moment. This is causing a continuous decay in the mentality of those who continue to denounce what is clearly present in our everyday life. or to understand some of the barriers that others face throughout their everyday life. My son will be a Spalding High School senior this upcoming school year, this upcoming school term, and I constantly have conversations about him regarding race and the processes in place systemically that adversely affect persons of color. This conversation extends far outside the classroom. I'm a United States Navy veteran. I proudly served my country on 2 deployments into the Persian Gulf. It was recently made public that the United States military is now teaching critical race theory and race-related infrastructure for military service members. If our military is teaching those who lead our troops into battle about this same subject matter, then why would we want our youth to begin learning this as they mature into adulthood? Isn't it true that it is easier to learn something than it is to unlearn something? Why would we want to teach our youth the beginning learnings of this as they mature versus trying to drill it into them as adulthood? It is imperative that we teach our children when they are younger. It is imperative that we drill it into their mindset that we have to be open-minded. When we stood for the Pledge of Allegiance, I stood in respect, but I did not salute. As a black man in America, it is extremely difficult for me to salute a flag that I bled for, knowing that I can be killed in America just because of the color of my skin. Insert implicit bias if you feel that this isn't true. While I've read the comments stating that this type of educational training would cause division between our youth, I'm here to advise you that our youth are more united than ever, from music to sports to video games to TikTok. The youth of America continues to destroy cultural barriers and embrace an open mindset. This topic surrounds an uncomfortable topic that many of us don't want to discuss. Well, if we're going to be effective, we have to learn to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. In America, it is true, and it is a hard truth, that minorities are disproportionately incarcerated, killed, and overlooked, causing significant disparities in life, in social status, and in social health care and health equity. Well, I'm here to advise those who continue to fight this mindset that the theories and educational programming here is applicable and needed. You will be the minority in the coming decades. One speaker stated that all students should be given the same opportunities. I agree. But it is stated, it is known, and it is documented that not all students are afforded the same opportunities. They may have the same building, the same desks, the same locks, the same lockers, but do those teachers maintain that same mindset as they do at Moore Elementary than they do at Crescent Elementary? This is why this notion needs to be taught. Someone stated that we can't focus on the past. You're right. We can't beat ourselves up for the things we haven't done or the things that we have done in our past. We can't change what happened yesterday or 100 years ago. But what we can change is our mindset today. Someone also stated that this is going to continue to push away from the education. No, this will allow them to have the same across-the-board education, because many students aren't acceptable to learning as some other students, and those teachers need to understand that implicit bias when it comes to these students. And you say their test scores are low. Well, did the teachers show the same amount of interest in those students? Well, I want to end with this. Keep that same energy the next time a Confederate proclamation comes across and you want to have a Confederate flag across the street from the library. At the Veterans Memorial, I came out and saw over 200 Confederate flags. What does that show our youth who will come out of the library to say, hey, we're learning about equality, about the world, about culture, and they step directly out of the library and look across the street and see 200 Confederate flags on graves? Thank you. And again, insert implicit bias.
Next, excuse me, but I think it's Audrey Banks.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Audrey Banks, the address 557 North 2nd Street, Griffin, Georgia. So, I'm going to have to move this closer. As an educator, I'm here to make this a very teachable moment. One of the things that I learned from my esteemed colleagues from the literary perspective is what we call the CRAP test. The CRAP test is a strategy that is utilized to dispel misinformation that might be circulating in websites, blogs, literary works that may not have been published or peer reviewed. So let me introduce the CRAP test that to evaluate the information that's been disseminated around Griffin-Spalding County. First thing, when we look at the CRAP test, we need to know what the acronym stands for. C is for current, if the information current. R, if the information is relevant. A, if there's authority, if the person that's putting that information out, have that person been published, have that person spoke at in academia, have that person even been peer reviewed. The other A, what is the actual accuracy of the information that's been put out? Where does that information come from? Have that information again been peer reviewed? And the P, what is the purpose of that information that's coming out? So is it information? Is it facts? Is it propaganda? Is it opinionated? So this is one of the things that we need to look at when we talk about the CRAP test. As a scholar in academia and have done really research looking at critical race theory, looking at equity, looking at looking at different theories that are out there, I'm here to tell you that when people correlate critical race theory and equity, it will fail the CRAP test. Critical race theory is reserved for academia and it's reserved for adults. As an educator, we learned early on in Foundations of Education that students learn at different stages of life. To actually understand what critical race theory is, the student has to be able to think at a higher complex level, which usually occurs in adulthood, hence why it is taught at the graduate level and taught in law school. So the information that critical race theory is in public education K-12, that is inaccurate information. Also, the information that critical race theory is infused in Georgia Standards of Excellence is also misinformation. Georgia Standards of Excellence has been out between 5 and 10 years. It rolled out with English and it rolled out with math almost 10 years ago. There has been updates up to the Georgia Standards of Excellence, but the purpose of the GSE is to make sure that our students are viable when they're competing globally. So when you hear that students need to learn math, arithmetic, history, English, arithmetic jobs are no longer here. They have to learn to be able to compete globally, and they have to learn mathematics and other curriculum to compete for jobs that don't even exist yet, because manufacturers are robotics. So we need our students to learn how to build those robotics so they can be employable in the future. Finally, when we talk about utilizing the CRAP test to dispel information about equity, when you think about equity, equity means that we're giving students what they need in order to be successful. If a student needs glasses, we would provide the resources for the students to have the glasses and not give them a hearing aid, hence making it equitable for that particular student. When we start thinking about bringing in the content of race, race is something that we look at. If race wasn't important, it would not be on job applications. It would not be on free and reduced lunch. It would not even be on our census things. So everything has to bring in the conversation of race. It's what we do with that information to make sure that our students are globally able to compete in the world. So again, I challenge the board, I challenge the leaders in Griffin-Spalding County to have forums so you can kind of dispel information using the CRAP test, so we can stop making crap circulate around in blogs, websites, and things that people who are not well published, who are not versed in the actual subject matter, so they can stop publishing things and we can challenge that information with viable evidence. Thank you.
Next, Dave Graves.
Yes, my name is David Graves. I live at 439 Beacon Court here in Griffin. And every once in a while, it comes a time when a citizen of conscience has to stand up and be counted. Such a time as this for me right today. And I want to spend the next couple of minutes talking about racism and critical race theory and how the two intersect. To deny that there's racism in this country it's obviously that would be false. It exists. However, I'd ask that you consider that we've come many, many miles since the days of Jim Crow. We still have some miles to go, and we've got to work at it. But as to critical race theory, it holds that America is systemically racist, that we got folks that are oppressors, we got folks that are being oppressed. I simply reject that as a generalized statement about the United States of America. There's also a notion that white folks are inherently by their birth racist. I don't believe this is true at all. And let me just take a moment and I'm a Yankee, okay, let me put my little blue hat on and remind some folks that there were hundreds of thousands of white guys who died in the Civil War to banish slavery from this land. That effort was successful. I think it's proof positive that not all folks are racist. And if you were to call those white folks who died in the Civil War racist, I'm sure they would be shocked. Now, as to racism, in my view, is a learned thing. It's not a natural thing. If you observe young folks, little kids, 5 years, 6 years old, mixed race playing together, get along just fine. In fact, even bluefish and goldfish swim together. So where does racism come from with these kids? They start out, they don't have it. It's learned, it's taught by their parents, by adults, and this is the kind of thing we have to try to address, to put it behind us. It seems to me that black folks, white folks can get along just fine once they get to know each other individually. However, it seems that there's a small group of people intent on dividing us to pursue their agenda. And that reminds me of the classic Marxist communist strategy of dividing people into groups, and it's pitting them one against the other so that the elite folks can then begin to take power. In Marxist communism, it was pitting the capitalists against the working folks. In critical race theory, it's pitting black folks against white folks. And who's the victim here? All of us, except for perhaps the elite at the end of the day. I'd like to give you just a couple of quotes before I get into my conclusion. In one of our great American heroes, Martin Luther King, for those of you who are old enough to remember him, made a quote that's lived for years and years, that judge me not by the color of my skin, judge me by the strength of my character. And nothing could be a better guidepost for all of us. I'll give you a second quote. 2 wrongs do not make a right. That comes from one of the wisest women I've ever known, my mother. And I think she was absolutely right, and I think that goes right to the heart of the matter that I'm talking about. And I think we need to try real hard, all of us, to work together to put racism behind us and become a single community. America is bigger, and it's stronger, and it's better than racism. And critical race theory, unfortunately, I think, takes us in the other direction. What it does, in my view, is it promotes white guilt, and it divides us racially. And this is not good for any of us. And what it does is this is a disservice to our children, to our grandchildren, and to our nation. And it must be banished. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Suzanne Herbert.
That is correct.
Did I say it right?
You did.
Give me an A. Give me an A.
Pretty unusual. Pretty unusual. Thank you. Yes, I am Suzanne Herbert, and I live at 805 Dusky Sap Court, Griffin, Georgia. I do not have children in public schools any longer. I do have grandchildren in public schools, and I also am a taxpayer. in Spalding County, we are not free from paying school taxes. So I am very concerned about what the school system is teaching our young people. In my view, the title, Foundations in Equity, is, I believe, what you have approved. I find that a little puzzling. Equity. Are we talking about equal outcome, or are we talking about equal opportunity? To me, what is known as critical race theory is not a serious or intellectual discipline. It's an attempt to shame and blame, which is neither serious nor intellectual. It reinstitutes, as far as I am concerned, segregation, separating ethnicities from one another, and not with positive outcomes. Tonight, you started this meeting with a prayer. I do not believe that such a theory honors Christian values, or let's just call them, if you don't consider yourself a Christian, moral values. I do not believe that it emulates or honors someone like Dr. Martin Luther King or Rosa Parks or any other African American activist who has fought against segregation. So I believe that we need to look at our children and what the impact is here, because this theory does not help our children intellectually, physically, emotionally, or spiritually. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Patricia Wilson.
I'm not a public speaker, so bear with me. I hope everybody can hear me and understand what I'm saying.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. That better?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And my name is Patricia Wilson. I live at 1534 East McIntosh Road. And I have no children in school anymore here in Spalding County, but I do live here. And so I took the time off from work tonight to be here because I think this is very important. I pray that all of these people here that have said stuff against this, that you all would take it into consideration and do not allow this in our schools. I wrote some things down, but I kind of got off of what I wrote. When I first heard about this, I thought it was just going to be in the schools, but now I'm finding out, no, it's not just in the schools. It's in the armed services. It's in companies. Companies are going to start firing people if they don't go along with what they're telling them to do. This is going to get way out of hand if we don't put a stop to it now. Then it's going to go through transgender, and then if a boy comes in one day and says he's a girl, he's going to go in girl's bathroom. He's going to be allowed to do that. It's going to get this far if we don't put a stop to some of this now. It's getting way out of hand. And my understanding of this is that you're saying that whites have always had it better than blacks because of slavery. We all know slavery was bad. Nobody denies that. And thank God it don't exist that I know of anymore. But I had people on my side that fought right alongside the blacks to stop slavery because they didn't want it either. They died for that, to stop it. So none of us want that. But you cannot bring a child in here and tell them that they are less than because of the color of their skin. It don't matter if they're black, white, what culture they are. They can't be considered less than because of the color of their skin. They're going to start being bullied, not only by the other students, but they're going to be bullied by racist teachers because there's racism on every side of the aisle, on both sides of the aisle. Is this going to put a stop to it? No, it's going to make it worse. So I hope that you all will nip this in the bud and do not allow this in our schools. And I would hope that the people here would call Governor Kemp, tell him to ban this so we don't have to keep coming to fight this. I think that's all that I had in here, but it's just going to cause worse trouble than we had to start with. It's going to put blacks and whites together. They're going to be fighting with each other, and this is not the answer to it. I don't know what the answer to this is. I think racism is going to go on to the end of time, but this is definitely not the answer for it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Next up, we have Dr. Yoshonda Jones. Pardon me?
Me and Dr. Yoshonda Jones switched places. I am mixed Summer Clackham. My
Okay.
prefix, yes, is mixed because I'm non-binary. People like us exist, and we are not going to go away anytime soon, and, we do have to go to the bathroom sometimes. So I hope there's bathrooms for us at school, and it's not a problem for anybody. Anyway, I'll get to what I came to say.
Let me put a pause. Give us your address as well.
Right, sir, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. You can pay me later.
Got a little heated. My address is 1959 Williams Mill Road. I live in Zebulon. I'm going to give a little bit of background about myself. I currently navigate 3 racial communities in Spalding County. My family, obviously we are white. Look at me. My partner and his family, guess their family too. They're black. I'm one of his, if me and him were married, she would be my sister-in-law, goes to Spalding County schools. And I'm most of my Hispanic friends. Many of those parents are too busy at work tonight to attend this meeting. I know a lot of kids from these families and stuff. So, I believe diversity and inclusion makes us stronger. For example, this is something I learned today off of Google. Mendez versus the Board of Education, Mendez versus their school district. It was the case of Sylvia Mendez, a Hispanic girl who was 9 years old and was denied admission into 4 school districts for being Hispanic. She sued the Board of Education, or her local Board of Education, and her supporters won. That paved the way for Brown versus the Board of Education. That is the precedent that created desegregated schools. Now, there's also gangs in our schools. There's already racism in our schools among the youth. That fact that I just stated, that it was Latino people who helped black people who achieve, and it pretty much essentially helped everybody achieve being able to go to the same schools, that is all about unity. Diversity is not about division. The name is a misnomer. It is about unity. And children should be able to go to school, and they should be able to learn about accomplishments. Right now, too many of our schools give the message that it's only white men who accomplish things. That is frankly not true. That little girl, Sylvia, was a pioneer. She paved the way for black rights. She paved the way for desegregated schools, which I'm thankful for. I mean, I don't really think, I wouldn't have wanted to go to segregated schools. Going to a diverse school as a child helped me. Learning give me just a second. I'm a little nervous. I forgot to bring my paper up with me. But teaching diversity is a good thing. I learned that Clara Barton existed. I learned about and founded the Red Cross. I learned that the founding fathers and their wives. I learned that women helped us Thank you so much. You are a lifesaver. I learned that women, because women are included in diversity and equity too, are important to American history too. I learned that Mexican Americans helped pave the way for civil rights. I learned that the Supreme Court ruled that the 14th Amendment didn't just apply to blacks and whites in a 1980s case. Diversity is about learning that we're all people and that transcend race. We learn about race, but in the end, diversity is about learning that we're all people and that all of us have helped build America. For example, during World War II, Douglas General MacArthur called the 158th Regimental Combat Team, which was largely Native American and Hispanic American, the greatest combat team ever deployed in battle. That was after they fought in New Guinea and the Philippines. Equity in schools teaches students that people of all races and genders make America great and have built this nation. And as far as implicit bias goes, teachers need to continue studying that. Studies have shown that male teachers can unintentionally, completely unintentionally, and female teachers, again, completely unintentionally, stereotype female students as less effective at math. That, in turn, leads to students having to live down to their teachers' expectations. If teachers are aware of their unconscious biases, they can fix them. What I said about math, that also applies to black students. A lot of teachers, it's actually even more insidious oftentimes when it comes to black students. Many black children have been exposed to lead poisoning because of their housing conditions. And that sucks, that's awful. But it goes unnoticed by a lot of schools because racial stereotypes because a lot of it gets attributed to racial stereotypes instead of lead poisoning. Say that you have a black kid who is a boy acting up in class. He's a little hyperactive. He's a little jittery. He has trouble paying attention. Maybe he even has emotional outbursts. Those are all symptoms of lead poisoning. But a lot of those are actual symptoms of lead poisoning. I have a degree in psych. But a lot of people will say, oh, due to implicit bias, they'll just stereotype him. They won't get medical people to come help him and see if he's been damaged. They should do that for more kids. And on restorative justice, that is common sense. Children do not need punishment and to be criminalized and police getting brought in every time there's a fight.
No, ma'am, we're not having an interactive.
I'm very sorry.
No, we don't do an interactive. No, please, ma'am. Please, ma'am. Please, ma'am. Thank you. Go ahead, ma'am.
I'm sorry for looking at the audience. I'm autism spectrum and I have trouble knowing where to look sometimes. I've been looking at some of my friends for support for public speaking. But, where was I? But equity, learning that people of all races make this country great and are part of this nation's history, have contributed to the musical landscape of the country, making sure our teachers don't have racial biases, making sure that kids don't have the police called on them and get criminal records when they get in fights. I mean, come on, kids get in fights. That happens. That's not a matter we need to involve the police in and get juvenile records going in. They didn't do that when I was in school. I'm I'm just saying that, like, I think that our diversity and equity program is good for our students and has made a lot of common sense. I'm sorry for going over time, and I will turn everything over to the next person.
All right, thank you. And last person of tonight, Dr. Yoshonda Jones.
Mr. Chair, I missed that last name. Can you just give me that last name?
The last name was Mix Summer Clackham.
Summer? Thank you.
Because I'm going to be brief. I'm not going to be up here for long. I think everyone, Mr. Atkins and...
Give us your address.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Yoshonda Jones. It's 104 St. Luke Drive. I do have a daughter that is in the Griffin-Spalding County school system, so I think I'm qualified to speak. Also want to say that I'm still trying to figure out why we're here when Dr. Simmons explicitly stated that CRT is not a part of the curriculum in Spalding County. So there's that. I've been trying to figure out as I'm sitting here who exactly are they that were in reference. I feel like sometimes there's an issue when people get up to speak to say that they're tax-paying citizens. We all are. I mean, sales tax is a tax too, so we're all qualified to speak. Just wanting to point out that I've been to the page that talks about saying no to CRT, seen everything on there. And I think it's interesting that people got up here to quote Martin Luther King Jr. on several occasions when we all know that at some point he was referred to as a communist. So I think that's pretty interesting. But I want to say that I think it's very unfortunate that we find ourselves in a situation where people are trying to operate a power structure while forcing the citizens to accommodate various lies. I feel that CRT is fake panic on display. I feel like it's just an election talking point now at this point. I think it's sad that people are being forced to revolve around or reject outright blatant lies about CRT. And for someone to get up here to speak from a Black person's perspective, I think is very disrespectful. I think it's easy to reject a notion when you don't have the Black skin that's being discriminated against. I'll just say that. Disappointed about the comments about Ibram Kendi's books. I don't think that we are in Nazi Germany where we should be burning or banning books, especially when this is very helpful to the students in the school system. And if you don't think that we need CRT, I think we definitely need CTS in the schools, and that's critical thinking skills. I feel that some people may need to be sitting right beside their children because apparently they may not be smarter than a fifth grader when it comes to avoiding being indoctrinated by faux news and QAnon conspiracy theory regurgitation. So there's that. I also want to say I noticed that a lot of our Black educators and a lot of our Black school board members were being attacked on this Say No to CRT page. And I just want to say that these two districts where Mr. Brown comes from and where Mr. Holmes comes from are predominantly Black. And an attack on them for their voices to be speaking up for us is an attack on us. So just think about that when we're talking about forcing election or recall or trying to get them out of office. We put them there to speak for us. And that's all I have to say.
On behalf of the governance team, I want to thank you all for being here sincerely. I'm one that advocates for effective communication, but we have to hold true to that effective part. I think we need to have discussion with each other so that we can have a consensus meeting of the minds. In communicating effectively, we have to allow people to express their ideology. We can't express our ideology and not allow them to do the same. That's not effective communication. I'm glad to see this room. We normally don't see this number of people. It's normally the board members and staff members. So if this what it takes to get you all involved in what's going on in the school system, so be it. I'm just glad to see you down here. But I implore each and every one of you to take the time out to talk to the superintendent. Let me do this. All staff members, raise your hand. I want all staff members, raise your hand. Now you look around and look at these people that have their hands raised. They will love for you to come talk with them, get factual information, not what people's opinions are, but factual information of what we are doing in our schools and in our school system. I implore, I encourage, I challenge you to go talk to some of these people. Talk to your board members. We're your board members. So if you want to have conversation with us about CRT, please, ma'am, and please, sir, contact us. And we can tell you and show you what exactly we are doing. Don't get caught up in all the hype of what people are that are not even part of this community are saying. This is your community. This is your school system. We can show you and tell you what we are doing. It's not no secret. So let's not be bickering back and forth at each other, because who's going to win? We're here for our kids, and we want the best for our kids. So come see us, talk to the staff, and we can show you and we can tell you exactly what we're doing. We have a curriculum. Dr. Taylor, raise your hand. Over here. She's our curriculum person. And where's Dr. Sauce? And Dr. Sauce in the back. They can tell you everything that's being taught at every grade level. We're not trying to hide anything. We're not trying to slide anything by anybody. I guarantee you, neither one of us 5 members are here have a political agenda. That's not important to us. We are here because we love kids and we want the best for our kids. At least I can speak for me, and I guarantee you what I'm saying, they will amen me on what I'm saying. We don't care nothing about all this political jargon. We want to take care of our kids in our community. So I implore you to come see us, talk to us. Don't just assume about us, about the school system. Come see us and talk to us, and we'll be more than happy to share with you what we're doing and what we're teaching your kids. Thank you for coming. We'll answer any question after when we go on break. We'll be glad to talk to you. At this time, we're going to take about a 5-minute break, and we'll get back to our agenda. And ma'am, if you need to talk to me or anyone, just come on up and we'll answer your question. Thank you.
back to you. It's good? Yes, sir. All right, good, good.
If we could reconvene, we'll get back started. Well, brother, wasn't no blood. Go. We will reconvene and continue. Thank you all for what has happened so far, and at this point we want to approve the consent agenda. If
Mr.
I
Chairman,
could get
could
a
I-
motion.
Mr. Chairman, if I could I have
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
personal
sorry.
privilege to
Yes, sir.
introduce
Yeah.
two
Yes,
guests?
yeah. We're going to allow Mr. Shepherd. I think we have some guests that's with him. I'm allow him the opportunity to introduce them.
Yeah, we have Susanna Good and Lucas Eddings with us. They are law students who have been interning with Smith, Welch, Webb, and White this summer, and they wanted to kind of get the experience of how a school board operates. Susanna, I was just telling somebody, she's from the left coast. She's from California, did her undergrad at American University up in D.C., and is about to start her third year of law school up at Emory. Lucas is from Henry County. Both his parents are career educators. In fact, his dad is the assistant superintendent down in Pike. Lucas did his undergrad at Georgia, and he's about to start his second year of law school at Georgia. So
All
I
right.
appreciate you giving me an opportunity to introduce him, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Yes. Welcome. Thank y'all for being here. Thank you for that reminder, Mr. Shepherd. You know, sometimes you get a little wound up and forget things sometimes. If we could get a motion to accept the consent agenda as it is presented, or if there's any corrections that need to be made, let it be known at this time. But we could get a motion, please.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion.
We got a motion. Can we get a second?
Second.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor? So by 5-0. Thank you so much. Next, we have our action items. First up, we have a request for abatement of taxes by the Griffin-Spalding Land Bank Authority, Miss Virginia Church.
Good
How you-
evening, Board.
Good evening. How you doing, Virginia?
I'm doing fine. How are you, sir?
Doing great.
I am Virginia Church. I'm representing the Griffin-Spalding County Land Bank Authority. I come before y'all periodically and ask you to expunge back taxes that were owed to the school system that are never going to get paid. But I do that at a time and place where the properties that are listed for you are already back in a tax-generating role.
Oh, cool.
It is pretty cool, isn't it? So I have compared our list to make sure we have the same ones this time. And if you would, I would appreciate a vote in favor of expunging these back taxes on the listed properties. Thank you.
Right. Board members, you've heard from Ms. Church. What's your pleasure? Could we get a motion? Motion. We got a motion and a second by Ms. Cook. All in favor, show by raising your right hand. 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Church.
Thank you.
Good to see
Appreciate it.
you.
Good to see y'all.
Sharon Royal is a member of the Land Authority. She's in the audience.
And I thank Sharon for keeping us abreast of what goes on down there. Thank you so much. I know someone that already benefit from your information that you put out. Next up, Stride Software for Virtual Academy, Ms. Ashley Crawford.
Good evening. All right, the Griffin-Spalding County School System will partner with an external vendor to provide the virtual learning option for students and parents who desire to remain at home for the upcoming school year. The virtual students in grades K through 5 will be served through Stride Learning Solutions. It is recommended that the Griffin-Spalding Board of Education approve the partnership with Stride at a cost not to exceed $300,000 for the 2021-2022 school year using ESSER Care 3 funds.
All right, board members, you've heard from Ms. Crawford, and I was trying to make sure the information was in our packet.
It is.
It is, okay. I see so much from Lunny. I figured this was the Lunny show. Yeah, it's a lot, bro. Okay, board members, do we have a motion to accept Stride Software for the Virtual Academy?
So move. Anything that's going to help with student achievement, Mr. Chair.
We have a motion. Can we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Dawes. All in favor? Raise your right hand. 5-0. Thank you, Ms. Crawford.
You're welcome.
Oh, you stay up there.
I do.
Good. Do it again. Go ahead with your next one.
All right, this was with Edgenuity. The Griffin-Spalding County School System will partner with an external vendor to provide the virtual learning option for students and parents who desire to remain at home for the upcoming school year. The virtual students in grades 6 through 12 will be served through Edgenuity. It is recommended that the Griffin-Spalding Board of Education approve the partnership with Edgenuity at a cost not to exceed $448,530 for the 2021-2022 school year using ESSER Care 3 funds.
All right, board members, you've heard from, Ms. Crawford. Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Got a motion by Mr. Dawes, second?
Second.
Second by, was that Mr. Brown?
Yes, sir.
Second by Mr. Brown. All in favor? 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have an addendum item, and it's coming from Mr. Shepherd on the SRO contract, and I do think you all have a copy that Mr. Shepherd provided for each of us. The floor is yours, Mr. Shepherd.
Thank you, sir. Just very quickly, as far as background, the school district employs certified law enforcement officers as school resource officers. Some are employed in conjunction with the city, some with the county, depending on whether or not the school is actually located in the incorporated areas of Griffin. Generally, those resource officers do not work during summer school. This year, it was determined that we would need a city police officer to act as a resource officer during the summer program that was going to be held at Kelsey and Mainstay Academy. So we entered into an intergovernmental agreement with the city to compensate them for the hours that their police officer would work as a school resource officer for us. That agreement was entered into in the first part of June. There were two errors in that agreement that were discovered, I guess last week. Mr. Atkins called me last week to inform me about it, and we said that we would prepare an addendum to that agreement to try to cram into tonight's agenda if we could. And very briefly, one, there was actually a week that the resource officer would be working that was left out of that agreement. The resource officer actually worked that week, so we owe the city money to reimburse them for his hours that he worked for that week. Also, when we entered into the agreement, it was anticipated that the resource officer would work 4 hours a day. As it turned out, it was necessary for him to work 5 hours a day. So the agreement is being modified to reflect that week that resource officer worked, the extra hour per day while he worked, And if you adopt that, this addendum to the agreement, it gives the school system the authority to pay the city of Griffin what we owe.
Okay. Do we have to pay Officer Natal back there for being here tonight?
Yeah, when I walked in, he had his hand out like that. So.
Good to see you, bro. Just, you know, I'm kind of particular about my name. Do that need to be corrected?
I think it does.
It does?
I'll fix it.
Okay. All
I'm
right.
sorry. I had Gail working on this thing today while I was doing something else.
Okay.
And I didn't do a very good job of proofing it, so
Okay.
I'll fix it.
All right, all right. Board members, you've heard Mr. Shepherd. Can we get a motion to accept the correction, the addendum correction?
So moved.
Got a motion by Ms. McDonald,
Second.
second by Ms. Cook. Ladies first, Mr. Dawson. Second by Ms. Cook. All in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Okay, presentations. All right, we got the money man, Mr. Byron Jones, giving us our May 2021 financial report.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members.
Good evening.
I'm real delighted to see that I'm put first of 4 presentations. I like that. I'm used to being last, so I will be brief. This is the May financial report. Again, the way our board meeting schedule work sessions fell, it's a little later in the schedule, so we'll circle back with a June one here pretty soon. I'm on page 1, summary sheet. I tell you this every month, 91% on the revenues, 85% last year, so we're tracking about 6% ahead, and this is general fund on the revenue side. Our expenses are only at 78.8% versus 79% the prior year, so that's also trending in the right direction. So both of those are going the way we want them to do with 1 month left in the fiscal year. You should have received your email on the expenses recap for legal for the month of May to be paid in June. Jumping down to capital projects, you're going to see a lot more check writing in the month of June, so just a little small amount in May, $405,000 for technology, a little bit for Spalding High, and some for safety and security. eSplosh continues to be strong in this community, almost $1.1 million in the month of April. Again, that's a retail month, so it runs a month in arrears on how we report it. But your 10-month average is still almost $1,030,000. I mean, that's awesome. So thank you to the community for voting that in. And then nutrition, I'll speak to that again when we get to that report. $1,370,000 is now the amount that is kind of in deficit if you look at the 1 year in itself. Robert and his group started with about a $1.2 million reserve going into FY21. They're at about $1.4 million, so they've used up their reserve, and you all know why. I mean, we've been out of school or been virtual or the participation's been down. So anyway, I'll speak to that again in just a second. Just a few comments. I'm on page 2. I keep every time referring to this. I just wanted to speak to the general fund. I'm on the far left-hand column. $29.5 million in reserve. That's going to come dramatically down the next time we meet because of our salary accruals that the school system usually books in the summer. So 2 months of teacher salaries where they receive their check after they've completed their contract will be booked in the month of June. So that may come down $10 million or so. That's just the way the state requires us to book that. So that's the only comment I wanted to make on that. On page 3, that's your general fund for the current year. I'm on the year-to-date column at the very bottom. $9.9 million is what we're running ahead in the current year, but again, most of that will come back down after we book those salary accruals, but we still should be positive in the budget side versus what was budgeted originally when I came on board. Really, all I wanted to do lastly is just jump back to the nutrition page just to make a couple more comments, and that is on page 11. Again, that bottom number on actual. I had talked to you all before when we were talking about the last month's financial that we would potentially need to move some money over for a transfer, and I'll report that to you in the month of June. We did move over about $700,000 for the nutrition program, and we'll still reconcile that at the end of our financial to see if that's necessary. Mr. Wheeler is going to receive some additional reimbursements from the feds and state kind of like we got some restoration on austerity in the general fund that we wasn't expecting in this year. He's going to get some additional monies as well that they're giving to everybody. It's somewhere in the $400,000 to $500,000 range. So he will be propped back up, for better way to say that, when we're done giving you a closeout report. And just your charts on page 15 for your SPLOST, again, your little color-coded chart that shows you how you're trending on the SPLOST. Again, I said something earlier about that. That's really a good positive situation to be in with our capital projects that we've got planned in the next fiscal year. That's all I've got. Has anybody got any questions? Again, this is for May.
This is for May. Any questions, board members?
No, sir.
Okay.
All right, appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Next up, we have our 2021-2022 Back to School Plan by Dr. Donald Warren.
Good evening, board members and audience.
Good evening.
We're very, very excited to open our 21-22 school year with the vast majority of our students receiving instruction in person. Additionally, the vast majority of our teachers will not have to contend with simultaneous teaching this school year, except in a few isolated incidents where virtual students have exceptional needs, such as special education, English language learners are gifted, but those are very few and far between for select virtual students. We're still in a pandemic, so we'll continue to layer multiple mitigation strategies on our campuses to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Most importantly, we reserve the right as a school district to make changes based upon revised guidance from the CDC, Georgia Department of Public Health, as well as our District 4 epidemiologist team. And we're going to start meeting with that team another week or so. They took a break for the summer to take care of business on their end. In another week or so, we're going to start meeting with them routinely to review the data for Spalding County. Okay. The purpose of tonight's presentation is to provide for you an overview of our plans to reenter school safely, as well as gather feedback that you may have that you want to share with us. And in the end, we'll take questions that myself, our CAP members can respond to. Next, hopefully by the end of this week, beginning of next week, we will publish a COVID-19 web page on our website to inform the public of our plan to return to school. It will also include various resources and videos and a frequently asked questions page. This information will also be pushed out via social media. This slide shows our mission to empower students to graduate college and career ready, and our school district serves to transform our students into future-ready learners and contributing members of society. We have three non-negotiables: be professional, accountable, and communicate effectively. If you look over to in the corner there, they're spelled out in the acronym PACE. That's what that stands for over there, Mr. Brown. Professional, accountable, and communicate effectively. Next. Okay. What I'm going to discuss with you covers all of the items listed in that first column there. Those are our goal areas of our current strategic map: student performance, family and community engagement, organizational effectiveness, as well as high-performing staff. When it comes to masks and screening, this school year, masks will be optional for all students and staff. We're going to continue to have individuals do self-monitoring via question guidance from the CDC. Also in our schools, we use thermal cameras as they enter the school building. We're going to stress keeping a 3 feet social distance to the extent possible. Employees will respond to those questions that I mentioned earlier via their computer or cell phone on a daily basis. We will not be taking and recording temperatures daily. As it relates to bus transportation and field trips, masks will be available for students upon request. We're going to continue to clean and disinfect our buses daily. Our kids that compete in athletics and academic competitions such as CT and what have you, they will still attend various scheduled events around the state. Academic trips to be considered following our normal process. Overnight trips will be considered on a case-by-case basis, as well as out-of-state trips. As usual, our academic trips must be tied to our Georgia standards of excellence and approved at the school building level by the principal and at the district office level as in years past. When it comes to cleaning, we're going to stress our normal hygiene protocols with our students on day one, as we did last school year. Normal cleaning with increased attention to high traffic areas such as restrooms and high touch areas will be cleaned and disinfected throughout the day by custodians. Sanitizing chemicals, spray bottles, hand sanitizers will be available at all facilities, especially our antibacterial foaming soap. We're going to continue to use nebulizers, sprayers, and foggers for any events that occur. Facilities, we're going to continue to place sanitizing stations throughout our facilities. Our water fountains will consist of water refill stations where students will refill bottles and cups only. We're going to strongly encourage students to bring water bottles from home. Additionally, the board was so generous to approve a purchase of our bipolar ionization units back in the spring, and those units have started coming in, and they have been installed in schools as they arrive. They will use an ionization process to filter the air of viruses and bacteria. So that's some really high-tech equipment. Thank you for your support of that. As in the past, we're going to encourage our adults and students to stay home for various symptoms such as fever, cough, shortness of breath, loss of taste or smell, fatigue, headache, sore throat, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, nasal congestion, and drainage. We're going to encourage our employees, students, and parents to please remain at home if you display those symptoms. If someone becomes sick at school, be it a student or adult, they will be isolated and asked to wear a mask until they leave the campus. Parents will be contacted for pickup, and we're going to follow our normal COVID response protocol and guidance. When it comes to visitors on campus, we're going to really encourage parents and guardians to attend open house, which is next Thursday, July 29th from 3 to 7 p.m. to meet their child's teachers. We're going to have limited visitors on campus by appointment only to conduct school-related business. We will utilize mentors and volunteers to support our students. At pickup and drop-off, we're going to ask parents to remain in their cars because, once again, we are still in a pandemic. Regarding the first day of school, there will be plenty of adults on site to assist students in finding their teacher's classroom. Again, they probably will find the location of that classroom during open house next week. We just want to keep things safe and secure because, again, we're still operating school in a pandemic. We're going to work hard to establish routines. However, we will allow certain visitors on campus, such as college recruiters, to share information with our students regarding post-secondary options. Last year, there was a little dip, and that was an unintended consequence of having such a tight, secure guard on our campuses. But this year, we will work with various college recruiters and job recruiters to support our students' needs. Related to meal procedures, we're going to offer meals free to all students with our CEP program. We're going to have serving lines in our lunchroom as normal. There will not be a keypad entry as in years past. We will use a tally sheet to record the number of students that receive a breakfast or lunch. Meals will be consumed in the cafeteria and other designated area to support social distancing. And we have not by any means forgotten about our virtual students. We will communicate with our virtual students' families regarding how they can order meals twice per week at various campuses around our district. Curriculum and grading, again, we're going to focus on our Georgia Standards of Excellence. The grades will be focused on showing the students mastery. Students will receive opportunities to receive extended learning as needed at each of our campuses. Matter of fact, that happened this summer at each school in our district. Extracurricular activities. At every level, elementary have specials classes, middle school connections, high school electives. Those courses will continue based upon their school schedule. Happy to report to you that smart music has been purchased for our fine arts students, band and chorus. That went over very, very well last year, where we purchased subscriptions for our students as well as our teachers. That's been purchased for this coming school year. All athletic events will be conducted under GHSA guidelines. Athletic event attendance will be at normal capacity. We will not limit capacity. Bands and cheerleaders may attend athletic events in as well as out of town. And I will remind you, per Senate Bill 42 this year, homeschool students are eligible to participate in athletics. That's homeschool students. So we will work with those students, homeschool students and their parents, to adhere to our GHS guidelines to be fair to those young men and young women. However, our virtual students will not be allowed to participate in extracurricular activities as previously informed and cited to their parents when they raised their hand and signed up for virtual instruction via Stride or Edgenuity. So these are the main highlights and overview of our return to school program. Again, the plan is to get your feedback tonight and this week. And once that feedback is given, we will develop a COVID-19 webpage on our website, FAQs, and other resources and videos to get this information out to our stakeholders so they'll be well aware of what to expect when we return to school in a couple of weeks. At this time, I'll address any questions you may have as well as members of our cabinet.
Board members, any questions?
Were we sent a copy of this? Do we have a copy of this?
Yeah,
Not
I
yet.
didn't see it in the packet.
No.
You did not have a copy in your packet, Mrs. McDowell. I'm sorry, Ms. McDonald.
McDowell.
What is it called?
McDowell, that was a snafu there. I'll also share with you, in many ways, what you saw on the screen did not align with what Dr. Warren indicated.
Right.
For example, the 50% capacity at athletic events. I apologize for that oversight. I'll get that corrected. You will get a copy of the plan. Tonight's event was an effort to garner feedback from you, but to also ensure that we didn't have any blind spots relative to implementation. I really just wanted you to know that while the narrative regarding what's happening relative to reopening schools seems to shift like the wind, we're still out in front. We still have a plan to bring our students and our staff back as safely as possible. We'll still put forth the appropriate amount of energy and efforts to mitigate the spread of the virus while students are in school. We'll continue to encourage those who haven't been vaccinated to do so. It will help us keep schools open. We'll continue to express our gratitude for those who have been vaccinated. It has enabled us to get to this point. But to succinctly answer, no, ma'am, you do not have a copy of that slide deck.
I thought I may have missed it in an email or something. That's fine. No issue.
I will get it to you this evening. Alani, I think that was the first version displayed instead of the most recent one. That was not the most recent display up there.
Yeah, there's no rush, Dr. Warren. I just appreciate, because I think at one time Mr. Simmons said we would read. I thought I had missed an email is the only reason I brought it up.
No, no, you did not miss it. Tonight's proceedings, get your feedback on it tonight and throughout the week, and we will adjust accordingly to put it out there far and wide for our stakeholders to be informed.
And I just would like to, what you and I talked about in the hallway coming in, just to remind the public and people in this room that, we follow CDC guidelines and use the Department of Public Health, and we don't make these decisions emotionally. We make them scientifically, and I think that we will continue to do so to protect our students and our families and our employees.
Thank you for that, Ms. McDowell. Anything else for Dr. Warren?
Good.
Thank you, Dr. Warren.
Thank you, Dr. Warren.
All right, thank you.
While Dr. Taylor is coming to share with us about the CARES 3 plan, Mr. Jones, I had a question asked of me by an employee, and I just noticed she's here. She saw the tax credit for the child tax credit, and she was asking me about getting her a raise or some kind of tax credit. Miss Russell right here, I'm going to direct you to see Mr. Jones after the meeting, and he can explain to you what you're going to get. Okay. Go ahead, Dr. Taylor.
All righty, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Harper is bringing up the presentation. While he is doing so, I would like to introduce to you, I'll be co-presenting with our new Director of Federal Programs, Ms. Barbara Austin. And so I'll introduce her now, and she'll come up in a moment to share in the presentation.
All right.
All right, so again, good afternoon. I am here to present to you the Elementary and Secondary Schools Emergency Relief Grant, also known as ESSER, or you may hear it being referred to as the CARES 3. And I'll talk to you in a moment about those acronyms. You've already heard from Dr. Warren, our mission statement, our vision, and then our non-negotiables. Tonight, I'm going to share with you about the CARES funds, which we really feel are going to give us a resource that would allow us to give all of our students a different experience as a result of the COVID pandemic. We do believe that these CARES ESSER funds will allow outcomes that will improve student achievement for all students. On the strategy map here, you will see that we will be focusing on goal area 3, which is organizational effectiveness. And so jumping into a summary of CARES, Congress has set aside funds that are allotted to the Education Stabilization Fund through CARES. And CARES stands for Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security. That's a lot, so we just refer to it as CARES, and this is the third round of those grant funds. And that act is for both elementary and secondary school, and it is for emergency relief. So it's emergency relief funds, and when you put that together, it is referred to as ESSER. This was signed into law March 20th, 2021. And what you will hear today is our plan to budget and allocate for the spending of $32,796,518. So you see that full amount, roughly $32 million. And so a bit of background. The purpose of these funds is to implement and provide activities to either prevent, prepare for, or to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic, including the impact on social, emotional, mental health, and academic needs of our students. So we do know that COVID did take a toll on several of our families, and you will see in a moment some of the survey data that we have received as a bit of input as we have planned. So for the allocation of these funds, we had to develop 3 areas of priority. So we will spend funds in the following area. 1, we will focus on the safe return to school, and you've heard Dr. Warren talk about our return to school plan. Secondly, we will address this idea of learning loss, and that is a term that comes from Congress. However, here in Griffin-Spalding, we would like to refer to learning as unfinished rather than what our students have lost. We want to look at that from a positive mindset rather from a deficit mindset. And so we will be addressing priority standards and gaps in essential skills. We will be monitoring and also accelerating the academic proficiency. I'm excited about that because a lot of the funds that we do receive from the federal government, it limits sometimes how we can use those funds. So this does give us an opportunity for acceleration. And then finally, number 3, the third priority area is delivering high quality professional development to our teachers and our staff so that they are able to meet the above mentioned needs. Some guiding questions that we have to pay attention to is 1, will the proposed use of funds prevent COVID? Will it prepare us for COVID? And will it allow us to respond to the coronavirus? You've heard in Dr. Warren's presentation that we are still in a pandemic. So these funds will allow us the aforementioned opportunities. The second guiding question is it an allowable use of funds under ESSER? And Ms. Austin is going to come and share with you what those allowable uses are. Is it reasonable and necessary? So we will be good stewards of these funds, and we will use that question number 3 to keep us in good stewardship. Does it support returning students to the classroom? And then finally, you see the word, does it promote equity? And what we have discussed is that equity is meeting the needs of all of our students. At this time, Ms. Austin will come forward.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. And just to continue the conversation as we are planning, it has already been shared, to be good stewards of our funds, some of the ways that the ESSER 3 or CARES 3 funds can be used is primarily 8 strategic areas, and you'll see our infograph there. But just to kind of give us some ideas of some of the conversations that are already occurring within our teams internally, and also with our community members that are participating as part of the committees that you'll hear more about here shortly, are in the areas of making sure that we can meet the needs for our students with such things as hotspots or technology needs, from school meals, preparing and delivering those meals, and costs of meals that may not be covered by USDA. From a mental and physical health standpoint, counseling, school nursing, mental health professionals that we may need within our schools, and providing wraparound supports within our schools for all of our students. Some supplemental services and learning services that are really that have been shared that are really, we're excited about being able to offer extended learning opportunities, tutoring opportunities, whether it may be after school, before school, or even on Saturdays, or some of the responses that we've heard so far as well. And so also using our funds in the areas of facilities and equipment, from deep cleaning our buildings and buses to continuing to provide PPEs within our schools and for our students and for our staff. Professional development, training of our leaders, our teachers and staff within our schools, whether it's to ensure that we're able to provide quality instruction or as far as mitigation is concerned of COVID-19. And also the continuity of core staff and services. We certainly want to retain the great staff that we have that is a part of our team. And so how can we do that? Whether it's providing incentives for those staff to stay, or what does that look like here in Griffin-Spalding, whereas the need is great in some areas, and how do we attract those and keep the ones that we have? So we're able to utilize these funds to ensure that our team members are a part of our great district and that our students are receiving the best instruction from them. The next couple of slides provide some allowable activities in a comparison side by side by each one of the rounds that we received thus far. So our district did receive CARES 1 and 2 funds, and we're on our 3rd round at this point. So we've been fortunate enough to be able to be a part of those funds, receiving those funds from our federal government to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our students. And that's the next couple of slides that you'll see there. Thank you. And so here, one of the main requirements for the use of funds for our ESSER dollars is to ensure that no less than 20% of these funds are used to address unfinished learning, as we call it here, or as you see there, our federal government's terminology is learning loss. So at a minimum, 20% of that $32 million has to be allocated and utilized towards ensuring our students receive great instruction and to close any gaps that they may have academically. Thank you.
Hey, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
What will be included, or what will that learning loss plan of action be for our students?
Thank you so very much. So some of the feedback that we received thus far through surveys that have been shared with our community stakeholders, our parents, our teachers, and our students, one of the biggest areas that you'll see is tutoring. It will be extended learning, as well as ensuring that we're providing the tools that are needed within the school day and aligning the services in those extended learning opportunities to what our kids are learning in schools. And that came from students. Students say they want to be able to see the connection with that extended learning opportunity to ensure that they're able to grow from what they're getting. And so we want to just ensure that those pieces are there. Those are some pieces of the feedback that we received thus far. The survey is still open for the next couple of weeks, and the link to the survey is on our website for those that may not have had a chance to provide your feedback, please do so and be able to give your input on how you feel we should use the funds that we're receiving. So some of those main areas are extended learning, tutoring services, ensuring that they have the support from teachers, even outside of school, to be able to close some of that learning gap.
Okay, thank you, because I know I've gotten questions. I don't know about other board members.
Yes, sir.
Parents concerned about kids, you know, learning loss that may have occurred during the pandemic and everything. So,
yes, sir. And this is a time to be innovative. I mean, these dollars don't have necessarily the same restrictions as some of our other federal funding streams have. So this is a time to think outside of the box of what we really need for our kids.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. And I think the last couple of slides for me, the next one is just on maintenance of effort. And I know many of you may or may not know what that terms mean, but we do have requirements in receiving federal dollars that we have to meet our portion of that. So it's kind of we share in this relationship of providing services to our students. And one thing that's different with these funds is that ESSER funds are not included in our requirements for maintenance of effort. So that's good on our part that we don't have to match necessarily some of those funds that we have to do in some of the other funding streams. So we're really able to use those dollars within our classrooms for our teachers, our students, and within our schools, if that makes sense. Thank you. Okay. So the next couple of slides that you will see are extracted directly from our application, what we call our ARP application, okay, which is the ESSER application that we had to submit to the Georgia Department of Education, which gets the process rolling that we're receiving funds here in Spalding County, and this is how we're going to anticipate using those dollars. And so we wanted to include this portion for y'all, and it's extracted from the entire plan that's going to be provided and posted online so that everyone will have access to that and have any questions from that. So I want to make sure that we show, of course, 20% has to be allocated to addressing learning loss or unfinished learning in our district, and that's what you'll see there. And those areas that are listed there, we came up with, okay, these are the things that we definitely need to make sure that are happening within our schools. And of course, there were some things that were already, that were recommended, I guess you could say, from the federal government. The next slide that you'll see, and the last one from me, are some highlighted areas that we're hoping will yield a greater return on the investment of time and resources that our students will be able to see that achievement grow for them. So activities to address the unique needs of at-risk populations. These are those areas that were already listed in the application and how we're going to utilize a percentage of that remaining 80% in these areas. And so we just wanted to highlight and share with you some of those big ticket items to ensure that we are making sure those are implemented. So activities to address the unique needs of at-risk populations, and based on the definition from our federal government, those are those kids that may be a part of the population of students with disabilities, our English learners, our exceptional students as well. So we want to make sure that they're served. Also, training and professional development for staff of our school district on sanitation and minimizing the spread of infectious diseases, as well as those additional instructional needs that we may have as well. So we have 20% that we've allocated there. And then, of course, purchasing technology. And as Dr. Taylor comes back and share additional information with y'all, you'll kind of see how that aligns with what the feedback we've received thus far. Okay. Thank you so very much for the opportunity to present. Dr. Taylor?
Thank you, Ms. Austin. And so the next slide just shows you that, again, we are not a cabinet that is working in a silo in terms of allocating these $32 million. And so thus far, we do have 491 total responses. We are still garnering input as we begin to just develop and codify the budget. And so as of so far, 235 teachers, 61 students, knowing that students were out for the summer. And so we will continue to try to get students' involvement, 215 parents, total of 491 responses to date. July 31st. Okay. Thank you. Yes. And, you know, that is important. It is important to us, and we'll continue to, even after we allocate the funds, Principals are doing that as they are, really just working with scholars to figure out really just how to reacclimate them into school. We know that we returned to school last year, but, we're anticipating the return of school, just 100% this year. So we know that those needs are still going to be there, and we're just excited about, what we call an opportunity. And we know that right now we're amidst our strategic planning process as well. I talked to Mr. Simmons about that, and I said, it's kind of neat because a lot of times when you do your strategic plan, you don't necessarily have, your funds lined up, to do those things. And so we really are able to align, what our needs are right now. So we're excited about this process. And so some of the survey results or the input that we've received so far, I'll just highlight some of the top ones. Lack of academic related support. And the question was, in your opinion, what are the top issues or problems currently facing students in our school during COVID? And so again, lack of academic related support. And we're sure that that comes from just that distance, just not being able to be in that classroom with the teacher. And of course, teachers did play into this as well. You'll see number 2, lack of access to internet connection. And so you'll see that we'll have some response, and Mr. Simmons is going to come to you, I think, a little bit later this afternoon and talk about internet needs within the county. And then also that school-home communication. If you'll move to the next slide, the question here, what do you believe are the highest priority needs related to this school year? And you'll see academic improvement. It was, a whopping 76.4%. We recognize that. Mental health and social emotional were right behind it. And then, of course, what is on the hearts and minds of our people, health and safety within our school buildings. On the next slide, this is where you will see outside of the regular school day programs that we believe our schools should consider. Again, it is that tutoring, after school programs, summer learning programs. Many principals have expressed the need for bringing retired educators. So if you're in the audience, you want to come back, speak to some of our principals, bringing paras back in to provide that small one-on-one interaction with students. And so as we close out this particular presentation, again, we had 6 committee leads. They are listed there on the screen. And so if there is some sort of input that you would like to provide, you kind of see who would be leading those thought groups. And then finally, this is our timeline, again, being very transparent because we are wanting to come back to you on August 17th with a recommendation. And so at that time, what you will see are all of the thoughts and ideas of our stakeholders that we'll bring back to you with more specific outlined action steps that we want to take. So we've done surveys with all of our stakeholder groups. We've held parent meetings. We have 4 more on the books to have. The application is approved. And so it's not if we will receive our funds. The funds are there for us to have, and so we really just need to complete this process. And so Ms. Austin and myself wanted to come before you, give you just an update on where we are at this point so that when we come back with that allocation, you will know how we derived at that. Are there any questions at this time?
Yes, Dr. Taylor, I just have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Will building leaders based on local school data be able to have some input as to how their funds will be utilized in their individual school? Because, as you know, I'm a proponent of what's good for school A is not necessarily should be the cookie cutter approach to school B.
And they will. And so a couple of examples of that. Again, in following what's allowable. And so federal programs, in my division, what our job is keep us, out of orange suits. And so we'll keep, and what I'm meaning by that, we'll follow the guidelines and we won't spend anything inappropriate. So of course there will be some guidelines, but we are anticipating, for instance, with the 20% that is allocated just for learning loss, for instance, when you do the math on that, that is around $100,000 that each school will get. And so we will be helping them think outside of the box. You know, usually after school is just that. You know, it's tutoring, it's the teacher and the student. Well, these funds allow us to do wraparound service. So perhaps, you know, there's, you know, some social emotional components that students need. Really, it allows principals some flexibility to do some things that they need at their particular school. We are anticipating other types of block grants. What we mean by that is professional development. Okay, so we know that each school has different professional development needs, but of course that has to tie back into those non-negotiables and that district strategy map. So yes, principals will have flexibility, and what we are trying to do in the federal programs department is to ensure a smooth process so that all of our wires don't start getting crossed, you know, when it's time to spend the money and account for the money and the such.
And as children come back to school, and I'm just happy that they can and are, how will we assess, you know, one thing as a former teacher myself, one thing that I've been really concerned about is their social emotional. How will we assess, or what can we utilize to assess where they are in that process of, I don't think it's anything you get over with regard to the pandemic and with regard to not being in school, and I don't know. What's the plan, I guess, is what I'm trying to ask.
Right, and so, you know, that's Dr. Sauce's new area, student support services, but we do do a universal screener that does allow us to identify some behavior and social emotional needs that students have. And I see he's taking the microphone, so I'll let him finish that one out.
Thank you.
Guess you have to be smarter than the microphone. That is correct, what Dr. Taylor just referenced. For probably about 4 years now, maybe a little longer, we've been using this instrument that allows us to assess and understand where students are at socially, emotionally, and the ability to self-regulate, maybe potential depression, anxiety, things of that sort. It's an age-appropriate instrument, and we also work with Georgia State to help us analyze the data and provide that to school-based staff to make some determinations about how to assist students from there. So that's actually not going to be new for us this year. That's an instrument we've been using for a number of years now. We'll continue to do so.
You know, I'm a big proponent of meet me where I am today. I think that's really important that we all do that, because the needs of one is not the same need that the next door neighbor has. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Taylor.
Also wanted to welcome Miss Austin to Griffin-Spalding.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. McDonald.
It's hot in here.
We have broadband infrastructure by Mr. Keith Simmons, and after you do that, Mr. Simmons, you can go ahead and proceed into some introductions that we just talked about.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I know that I stand between you and dinner, so I will try and expedite this slide deck as quickly as I possibly can. Mr. Harper, let's move on to the second slide, please. Board members, the intent of this conversation is really to bring about some awareness and some connectivity, no pun intended, to the work that's taking place with federal programs and our ESSER grant funds, as well as some identified needs throughout Spalding County. So this conversation is going to be about a proposed opportunity to partner with both the city and the county, along with the school district, to accelerate the broadband infrastructure here in our county. Next slide, Mr. Harper. So relative to broadband service, you know that the pandemic highlighted the need for connectivity throughout the community. In many ways, students who were striving to learn virtually did not have the infrastructure. What I want you to take away from the slide deck, however, there are two terms. You have unserved and underserved. Unserved and underserved. Fortunately, we have more that are underserved, but this conversation is about completing that process for both unserved and underserved. Next slide, please. So in partner with the Georgia Department of Community Affairs, this broadband deployment initiative was birthed. It was birthed in collaboration with the local Georgia EMCs. And this particular slide is about showing you the disparity or the gaps, if you would, relative to broadband connectivity in Spalding County. Next slide, please. So for those of you to my right, what I'll share with you, because this is not the best depiction, in many cases what you're looking at is Spalding County in the middle. You're looking at neighboring Butts to the right, neighboring Fayette, Lamar to the left and bottom, upwards to Henry, north right corner of that particular slide. In the very center, you're looking at what should be gray area, but on this particular slide, it looks white. Back here, it's a little bit better. What I want you to take away is that gray area in the back is really one of the most highly populated or highly densely areas in our particular county by virtue of the city. That gray area is considered to be unserved, no connectivity. And so we have instances in which people live close to town and still, by virtue of their geographics or their location, they do not have service. Okay? So the misnomer is if you live in town and you are trying to connect, you may not have the ability to do so. Even if you called upon the school district to get a hotspot, you still may not have very stable connectivity. This conversation is about trying to find a way to accelerate broadband service throughout our county. Next slide, Mr. Harper. What I want you to take away from it is there are roughly 33,000 locations in Spalding County. As you can see, there are roughly 2,500 that are unserved. And again, the difference between underserved and unserved is just that. These locations have no broadband connectivity. So again, for the families who elected to have virtual school options, if they are in one of these 2,500 unserved locations, it doesn't matter how well my hotspot is, it doesn't matter how many Wi-Fi buses that we deploy, the connectivity is not going to be strong enough for those students to actively sustain learning virtually. Okay? Next slide, Mr. Harper. So through the Central Georgia EMCs and through various conversations, various studies, what we've learned is there's an opportunity to accelerate the infrastructure. Next slide, Mr. Harper. And basically what that does is it follows the current flow of electricity. It will leverage more than 1,000 utility poles that would need to be either taken down or erected, as well as the number of power lines that are in the county. The greatest takeaway is, again, if we are serious about being innovative relative to options for learners, if we have another pandemic, I can tell you the district will continue to do its very best, but there will be families, despite our best efforts, who will not be able to keep up with the district's ability to push out virtual instructional materials because they don't have the service in order to take advantage of that process. And so in some ways, while we've learned quite a bit from the last pandemic, what we also know is Spalding County in many areas is not ready for another. Next slide, Mr. Harper. So based on a $3 million offer, what it does is it gives Spalding County the opportunity to get its name on the list to accelerate the infrastructure to build out the broadband service area throughout Spalding County. The takeaways are roughly 98% of those areas that are currently unserved will get service. The other takeaway in this particular collaboration, because it's with the EMC, it's affordable. Next slide, Mr. Harper. So what you have is through Connects on Connect, you have two options, 100 megabytes at $50 a month or 1 gig at $80 a month. In many ways, this is less expensive, more affordable than what most going rates are for broadband service. The other side of it, and this kind of gets over my head, but Mr. Harper could talk to you about the value of having fiber in this particular process. What I wanted the board to understand, you heard Dr. Taylor and Ms. Austin talk about how we may leverage CARES money. You heard that there's a need to address those things that created hardships in families. Not necessarily learning loss, but if we have families who are still in unserved or underserved areas, should we need to close school, not just for a pandemic, let's say we have a severe weather incident in our area. If we need to close schools for four or 5 days, we have the capacity to continue instruction. Several of our families do not have the capacity to receive those instructional materials or engage in instruction, and we're trying to find a way to accelerate that gap. So that's the essence of this particular slide deck. I am not asking you, board, for a decision tonight. As you know, we have an intergovernmental retreat in a few weeks. I did not want this conversation to be broached to you in that retreat. I wanted you to be able to have some kind of understanding. And then I'll come back to you and talk about whether we believe it's feasible to partner, collaborate with the city and county to see if we can do more and do better for all of the citizens in Griffin-Spalding, or if you believe that maybe we need to go it alone, so to speak, and maybe spend those funds a different way. Okay, but that's the essence of the conversation. Again, I apologize for the swiftness of my presentation, but if you have any questions, I'll take those now.
Mr. Simmons, I know we kind of briefly talked about allocating 2 to 3 governmental entities as far as the cost. Is that going to be, I guess, allocated according to how each entity is going to benefit, or is it just going to be equally divided? Equally divided is the conversation that we're having with the city and the county at the moment. And the belief is equally divided because we all benefit. Equally divided. There are jobs now that families who have the capacity in terms of skill set to work from home may not have the infrastructure to work from home. So it's not just about our scholars, but it can be about economic development as well. If you are an adult with a skill set that enables you to work from home, but you're in an underserved or an unserved area, that's not an option for you.
Well, you have my support because I think this is awesome.
Yes,
for
ma'am.
all different kinds of reasons, whether, and this is not going to be, it may be the only pandemic I'll live through in my lifetime. This is not the only pandemic that we're going to see. And I truly feel that, but I'm all for it. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one quick question?
Say that again now.
May I ask one quick question? To make
Man,
sure
you
I
can
understand?
ask 2 or 3 questions.
I'm going to try to keep it to one.
That may last 2 or 3.
So this offer, if it becomes an offer, it only applies to people that are served through an EMC. It would not apply to somebody that's served through city utilities?
That is correct.
And so there's still people, though, that are served through city utilities that would be without access to broadband.
If we don't make some changes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, board members?
No questions?
Okay, thank you. Board members, one more personal point of privilege. To my right, I just want to acknowledge a few people, but I'm going to start with the youngest in the room. So you've all had the opportunity to engage and meet with Ms. Taylor Newkirk. She's an intern. She's a graduate student studying policy at the University of Maryland, and at the end of the week, Ms. Newkirk will be headed back home to continue her graduate studies. What I'm excited to share with you is that she came interested in learning about careers in education. She'll be leaving interested in learning how to come back as an employee. So, Ms. Newkirk, thank you for your service. She's excited about the work that we're doing at Griffin-Spalding. She's had the opportunity to visit some of our schools. She's been instrumental in the research conducted relative to the community school project. So again, I just wanted you to know that this will be her last board meeting for a while, but hopefully things work out. She'll be able to come back as an employee.
That's great.
The second group of individuals that I want to recognize are just these leaders to my right and to my left or out here. I'll share with you that last week we had our administrative retreat. These are a bunch of rock stars. They are excited about the work. They know how I feel about serving other people's children because that's the future of this community. And so you typically don't see this many school principals in a board meeting. I will share with you, they showed up because they're interested in governance. They showed up because they're interested in serving this community, and I just wanted to acknowledge and thank each of you for being here. So, principals, thank you. And that concludes my remarks. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Board members, you see in your packet there are some important announcements. Wednesday, tomorrow, the 21st, we have new staff orientations. There will be an introduction of board and cabinet members at Futrell, Carver, and GRCCA at 8:30. On the 28th is the education celebration at Griffin First Assembly, and one of our own native Olympians, Miss Wilma Tice, is on program to be the keynote speaker.
That's awesome.
And I think Adam went to pick her up from the airport today. Oh, there you go. Hey, Adam, you back? Okay, good to see you, bro. On the 29th, we have an in-person open house. Let's amen. And Tuesday, August the 3rd, we have a Board of Education meeting, and then the drop dead date for the first day of school is August the 4th.
Yay.
Amen. I don't know about you, but I'm excited about all of the announcement that was just mentioned, and especially for the kids to be back in school. And I think it's already been stated that we're going to do what's best for the safety of our staff and the students. And we're going to proceed with caution, and but we're just so happy for students to be able to be back in the schools and interact with each other. At this time, we have one item that is up for discussion in executive session. Okay, that piece. Okay. Okay, we have two items. One is evaluation of the superintendent, and the other one is the discussion about the rental property.
Mr. Chairman, actually, I hate to tell you this, but we've got three.
Oh, Mr.
And I'm gonna be brief, but I'm hungry too.
I'm just kidding.
It's, I just need to talk to you briefly about pending litigation, so.
Well, when you say briefly, Tim, that kind of scares me.
When I say I'm hungry, it means I'm serious about being brief.
Okay. We got
Mr.
three
Chair.
items for
Mr. Chair.
executive session.
Mr. Chair, if I could, I just wanted to recognize Miss Jewell, who is new to Griffin-Spalding. And and then Miss Austin also is new to Griffin-Spalding. We just wanted to give you a big welcome from the governance team, and we appreciate you being here.
Amen. I just looked back there and I saw one of my sandbox playmates, Miss Tanya Relaford. I guess she thought we were going to be feeding tonight, so she showed up. Good to see you, Tanya. Amen. If there's nothing else for discussion, we will wrap the gavel to go into executive session. But I would like to say again, it is so good to see everybody. And before we do that, I want to go to my left and start with Mr. Dawes and give the board members an opportunity to make any comments before we go into executive session.
I too am, like everyone else, excited that we are a little closer back to normal. Hopefully we will get all the way back, even if we end up having a new normal. But excited for our staff and the changes that are taking place.
Just wanted to thank all of you for being here tonight. Thank you to all the constituents and all the districts that came out tonight to talk to us. And thankful for all Mr. Shepard's guests here tonight too. Thank you for being here, and wish you nothing but the best in your careers and your schooling. Just thank you to all of you. I'm excited about next Wednesday when we get to go to the celebration. That's always a big thing, and it's very exciting to be able to attend that. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. We appreciate the comments that you made. We have heard you. I encourage you to continue to come to board meetings and to be involved in the process of educating our children. We as a board have the best interest of all students, and we encourage you to work with us as we continue to do that. This is a happy day for us that we are finally returning to some normalcy in life and in our school system. So we're very thrilled to be going back face to face, cautiously, as you can tell from the presentations tonight. Thank all of you administrators and staff for being here. Thank you for what you do. Please know that we're aware of the many hours of hard work that you put in behind the scenes to make our meetings productive, to make our school system run as effectively as it does. Thanks to Mr. Simmons for his leadership. Thanks to the board members for their unity in promoting quality education. Thanks to Mr. Shepherd for what he does to keep us in the fairway all the time with decisions that we make. It's a wonderful privilege to be on the Board of Ed. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Mr. Leader, for the opportunity to share with the audience tonight. I want to thank all of the constituents, districts 1 through 5, who came out tonight to make your voice heard. Regardless on what side of the aisle or what your comments were, know that they were heard. And so it's going to take more of us listening to each other and having conversations to get the understanding of what is going on. And so thank you so much for the opportunity to listen to you guys. It's a pleasure to serve on this board. To the staff, thank you so much for everything that you do. You are the real rock stars. I know that you are excited to be welcoming the babies back in the building. And look at Mitzi, she's really excited about it. And so we just want to be thankful for that we are in a school district that really cares about the whole child, the whole scholar, from the head to their toes. And so thank you for that opportunity, and I have no further comments, Mr. Chair.
I just want to make reference, me and Mr. Doss and Mr. Brown, we attended the administrative retreat the first day. I don't know if y'all noticed, but Mr. Simmons, as he looked and saw the letters for the PACE, I don't know if y'all noticed, man, I thought he was going to cry up there, man. I think that really meant a lot to see that, I guess, Ray or something surprised you with that. But I was excited of what I heard at the administrative retreat, and I've heard from some people who are rejuvenated and excited as well, and they're ready to go back to work. So I just thank Mr. Simmons and the board and all the staff for what you've done to get us to this point, because it had to be a team effort. And I just want to thank everybody for what you have done and what you have brought to the table. And just to reiterate on what Mr. Brown said, we have to talk and listen to each other. And that's what I like about this board here. I can honestly say that we have moved to a level of being able to be open and honest with each other, but we also keep it professional. And that means a lot. That means a lot in going forward in our maturity. And with that being said, we're going to...
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Mr. Shepherd has encouraged me to make a motion to go into executive session.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's why none of us have been on Channel 5 or going to jail. Shepherd had done a good job keeping us straight. Go ahead, brother.
I make a motion.
Got a motion? Got a second. All in favor? 5-0. Thank y'all for coming.